Hi. Yes, that's right. This week I'm doing Tove Jansson's art routine. If you're not fully familiar with Tove or you want a refresher, here's a brief introduction.
Du fortsätter att skrämma de som är mindre än du själv.
Allt vad jag orkar. Vi älskar överhuvudtaget att bli skrämda. De tycker om att man skrämmer dem lite lagom.
Tove Jansson is the Finnish artist and author best known for her Moomin characters. She was born in 1914 in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, to parents who both were artists in their own right. Her father was a well-known sculptor and her mother was a graphic designer and illustrator, whose career took second place after the father. During Tove's childhood, she and her brother's creative interests were encouraged and catered to, and Tove studied art in Helsinki, Stockholm and Paris, and wrote articles and short stories about her experiences, which were published in papers and periodicals during the 1930s. Though best known for her Moomin characters and the many books, TV, radio and stage shows, as well as comic strips adapted in that world, Jansson also painted in the modern style. In 1943, she had her first solo exhibition and was commissioned for public works, among them a mural at the City Hall restaurant in Helsinki. In her personal life, Tove was very progressive and ahead of her time politically, which clashed with her more conservative father. She had relationships with both men and women, though famously found her lifelong partner in Tuulikki Piitele, who inspired the character Tuutikki in Moomin. The two women built a vacation home on a small island in the Gulf of Finland as a way to get to live together in peace. Among plenty other published books, Tove wrote The Summer Book and is known to have spent a lot of time painting at the summer place by the sea. And so summer and the sea is what I typically associate her with, outside of Moomin. If you're not familiar with my channel, hi, my name is Josie, I'm an illustrator. This channel is about creativity. On this channel, I like to talk about how I try to live a creative life, things like art block and burnout a little bit. I recently broke out of art block and I'm kind of reconnecting with painting, which I haven't been doing in a long time. I also write. I'm also planning on trying artist routines. I already tried Frida Kahlo's, that's the first one that I did. You can find it here. Found that really interesting. Not only did I learn a lot about Frida, I thought it was time to dive into someone who I find really interesting. This is someone that I'm more familiar with. It's closer to my home turf. Tove Jansson is a Finnish artist, Swedish-speaking Finn, which is a minority in Finland. In Sweden, we have Finnish-speaking Swedes. Obviously, since the countries are very close and borders have changed a lot over the centuries. But don't worry, we're not going to go through the whole history lesson. Okay, so obviously finding an exact routine that she stuck to her whole life is kind of impossible. I don't know about you, but my routine changes every other week, if not more often than that, from day to day, depending on, what I'm going through, the amount of stress, how much I'm working, the hormonal cycle and stuff like that. It's really difficult to pinpoint specific things. Is it Charles Dickens who kept a really strict schedule? Anyway, most people don't keep track of their productivity like that. So I've narrowed it down to a few little things that is mentioned in her biography and in her letters and diaries and things like that. She is an early morning riser, which is great because I'm also an early morning riser. And there were two different things here, but the main one is early morning coffee and cigarettes. There is one version also and some mention of toast. So in the morning, immediately after breakfast, she paints and writes and draws and does her work chores for the day until about noon, where she has a light lunch, sometimes with her mother or with her partner. And then for the afternoon, she would most likely keep working or run errands or things like that, except I wanted to incorporate the sea. So if you're familiar with Tove, the summer was her main season. It was her favorite season. I thought after lunch, I will go spend some time by the sea, maybe read, maybe write. I guess we'll see how the day fares. And then depending on the time of the year, she would have friends over for dinner or socialize or simply spend a calm evening, preferably reading. All of this sounds like the perfect day for me. I'm gonna be doing most of the routine until my partner comes home and then we'll see how the rest of the day goes. If somehow you're unfamiliar with the Moomin characters, let me introduce you. The white, rotund, almost hippopotamus-looking Moomin trolls are creatures of Jansson's own invention, who live in a great blue, tower-shaped Moomin house in Moomin Valley. There appear to be other Moomin-looking trolls, though not all are referred to as Moomin trolls, as well as a slew of other colourful characters, both good and bad. At the core, the stories revolved around Moomin and his family, as well as his adventures with Snufkin and Sniff, and the people and neighbours in Moomin Valley that they meet. It's a very eclectic, whimsical and fantastical world that most Scandinavian children are familiar with. I think the main draw is not only that the stories can be very relatable, like escaping, cleaning your room, or eating your vegetables, to more fantastical things like finding a shipwreck or signs of pirates or elves. There's a huge cast of recurring characters, like the adventurer Snufkin, the scaredy cat Sniff, the very angry little Me, and the rogue Stinky, which is my favorite. Moomin Papa is an author and a bit full of himself in a charming way, while Moomin Mama is the very picture of the woman in charge of a household. And of course, the main character Moomin is still figuring things out. The characters were adapted into a serial by a Japanese anime studio, which is the version that a lot of millennial Swedes are perhaps most familiar with, and maybe one of the reasons why the characters were able to stay popular and relevant for so long, even outside of Scandinavia and Finland.
Här har ni mig! Jag är ditt Moomin-troll!
This year, 2025, marks the 80th anniversary of the first ever publication involving Moomin trolls, the Moomins and the Great Flood. I had breakfast, added some toast. I didn't just settle for coffee and cigarette, mostly because I do not smoke. So yeah, I've had my breakfast. I got dressed, obviously. The sun's coming out, even though it said it was going to rain the whole day. It's time to start working. If you know me, if you've seen some of my videos before, you will know that I obviously feel a kinship with Tove, not just because I grew up in Sweden. You know, Tove Jansson is she's from Finland, but she was a Swedish-speaking Finn, and so a lot of Swedish children grow up very familiar with her work, at least in terms of Moomin. Another reason why I feel a kinship with her is the fact that she wasn't tied down by a specific art form. So yeah, you know, she made comics, she wrote children's books, she wrote books for grown-ups with a childish mind as well. But also, like, her comic strips are, not only did the stories hold up, but the comic strips also. I've been drawing and painting my whole life. I'm interested in probably too many things, if I'm honest. I spent a lot of my early 20s making comics about things that happened in my life with my friends, and as I mentioned in my last video, painting. Also made illustration for games and some books and stuff like that. And I also write. It's something that I've been a little bit, I wouldn't say that I've been scared of showing that on the channel, because I have shown some of that. I've even read a short story, but I haven't talked a lot about my process because I don't know how interested people are in that. There are a lot of people online that are better than me and have actually published things. Wow, that's a very long-winded intro to this portion of the routine, which is her work. I still have coffee left, invisible girl mug. Wow, I'm gonna cry if I'm telling this story. Yeah. It's a story about a girl who is found by the Moomins and is taken in, and she's invisible until she realizes that she is appreciated and loved. And that's just a really sweet story, okay? I just love that story. And someone who was helping me when I started my illustration freelancing business, she was coaching me, and we were talking about having to be seen by other people and put yourself out there. Did some presentation work and stuff like that. And at the end of it, she gave this mug to me. It was a very sweet gift. Anyway, so what am I going to do? For my Tove work today, I'm going to spend some time writing, which I have been avoiding, mostly because I've been on vacation. I've had summer holiday. My partner's back at work now, so I have free reign to do as much work as I possibly can before he comes home. But in particular, one that I've focused on a little bit more is a children's book. Okay. Get to work. The beginning of the summer, I did writing spurts. I had a prompt for each story point, advancement in the story, between 300 and 400 words on each one of those. I didn't finish all of that, and I didn't write every single day, but I gave myself a few, 30 minutes here, 40 minutes there, get the main ideas out. And yeah, I haven't looked at them for about a month now, actually, so I'm gonna be looking at those. Obviously, I kind of jumped in between prompts because I didn't want to get stuck in with what I wrote last time or connect the dots yet. It's barely even a first draft. So I also have a lot of notes that I wrote a long time ago, which I didn't let myself look at before I started these writing spurts because I didn't, again, want to be bogged down or feel like I was locked into an idea. I don't know if you can see this. Yes, you can. So I started this the other day. Like I mentioned again in my last video, I'm getting back into painting. It's literally just a practice illustration. It doesn't really have anything to do with a story of any kind. So if you're familiar with Tove, the summer was her main season. It was her favorite season. On her mother's side, she had Swedish relatives. They lived in Stockholm. They would visit, and she would remember those summers really fondly. And later in life, to get away from public life and also to spend time with a female partner in peace, they built a summer house on an island in the Finnish Gulf. Spending time during the summer by the sea was a big deal to Tove. It was where she was most inspired. She loved summers. She loved the time she spent at that summer house. She also had a studio and she worked there. And because it's summer, and because the summer is also my favorite season, and because I also love the sea, I thought I will go spend some time by the sea. Truly, we were here 2 days ago and it was full of people. I see a coffee shop. Let's go. So yeah, reflections, final thoughts. Like I said with the Frida routine, it's a little bit unrealistic for me to expect that I could start living this routine. And actually, I've been reading this book, We Need Your Art by Amy McNee, and I started reading it at the start of the summer, and she talks about how a lot of creative people feel shame in practicing their art because who am I to think of myself as an artist? So that in itself also, and in one section of the book, she actually says that, there's lots of information available online on how productive Brandon Sanderson, who I've mentioned on this channel, and other artists and authors and famous people who have this, there's a blueprint online, several blueprints, and we get fed this false idea that if we just do like they do, then we'll be successful, and that's not necessarily the case. We need to find our own rhythms. That being said, it is really interesting to look at these people, and obviously this is made as entertainment, both for myself and for any potential viewers. I think it's really fun to try and live through another person's routine, and you might discover some things about yourself. This routine was much more in line with my natural rhythm than the Frida routine was. I'm a morning person. I love solitude. I love the ocean. I dabble in many different things. And I think, like I've mentioned already, I was very familiar with the source material. I was a lot more familiar with Tove than I was with Frida. Felt nice, feeling connected to someone who I never had the chance of meeting, but who has been such a huge part of my childhood, or whose work has been such a huge part of my childhood. There are obviously many things that I cannot cover on Tove in this one short video that is meant for entertainment. But I would really like to revisit her in maybe another video format. And yeah, like I said in the video on Frida, there's going to be things that I'm never gonna be able to achieve simply for the fact that Tove lived in a different time. She grew up with both parents being artists in a time where that meant something completely different than it does today. She had assistants available at times in her life, came up in a time where she could pave a path for herself. We're in a much different time. There's a lot of set paths and ways to achieving things. And I can't compare myself to that or expect myself to be as productive. Not saying that her accomplishments aren't amazing, they are, but it was also out of necessity. I'm sure I'll have other takeaways, and maybe I'll do another highlight thing once I've edited a little bit, thought out a more eloquent summary. And then my camera died, right after I said that last sentence. It's been over a week since I filmed that last bit, and I'll be honest, I haven't really come up with any new takeaways or anything like that. I feel like I summed it up pretty well. Hopefully the video is entertaining enough and insightful enough that you learned something about Tove. One thing that I did remember and did think about in my Frida video, I got a comment saying that oh, it would be interesting to see how Frida's routine as a painter affects I can't remember, a textile design. And that made me think. First of all, I thought that notion was kind of absurd. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I have thought in similar ways before, where if I just try someone else's routine, like if I just fulfill every step every accomplishment that this creator has achieved, then I will also have that. I will also reach that level. And I feel like that is kind of a dangerous way of thinking. So I actually wanted to bring that up. Me doing Tove Jansson's routine or Frida Kahlo's routine or any other now iconic artist's routine isn't going to make me a better comic book artist, a better painter, or I don't know, give me an empire of like all these little creatures of my creation. Being kind of, I don't know, I can't think of the right word, but like being romanced by that kind of mindset is really dangerous. And I think maybe like I can see the logic behind that. If I just take these steps and do these things, I will reach the same level. But it's not true. The only thing that is absolutely certain is your own personal growth. If you practice, you will get better at things, but that does not guarantee a seat at the table. Also, being good at something, like being technically proficient, also does not equal success. As someone who spent a lot of my youth really fixated on the idea of like a final goal, like where I wanted to get to, I missed out on a lot of joy on the journey. And I think the joy I missed out on could have informed better art. It also could have put me in the path maybe of like-minded people. Like there were plenty of times where I chose perfecting my skill over just socializing. Your well-being informs your creativity. I feel like, a routine does not make you a better painter, same way that a painter's routine isn't going to majorly affect textile art. The time of day that you have breakfast does not affect the quality of the art or the result or the message of the art that you make. To some people, this might be really obvious. I can see where that sort of thought begins. And I thought that maybe that's important to bring that up. And if you have any more thoughts on this, maybe let me know in the comments. I think it's a really interesting discussion. And sometimes I worry, like I lived a whole life before the age of social media. Spending time offline shaped me into being a weird person. The amount of time spent in the 90s just looking at things and thinking about them. Just 90s kids things. Anyway, I thought that maybe it's important to have that conversation, especially since I really want this channel to be, talking about creativity. So yeah, aside from that, I really enjoyed this routine because it was aligned with my normal routine. Obviously, I have a job that I go to. I'm not just sitting around writing children's books. If you'd like to see more videos about writing, please let me know because I do want to make more videos like that. If you want to see more about me talking about my art process or like delving into painting and analog creativity, please let me know. I also have several more routines that I want to do and hopefully they don't take as long to prepare for. Like I did the Frida one in March, I think, and we are now in August. So I have a lot of ideas basically. So if you thought this was a half decent video, then maybe please subscribe because there's more to come. If you want me to make a video where I talk about this, I'm happy to do so. I feel like I gave you like a taster in this and my general impression of it is good. A lot of the things that you know yourself about your art practice and your creativity, but that you need to hear. It's like a very tough love pep talk telling you we need your art. Wider variety of art, especially now in the age of AI slop. So yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to get in, just, a final edition for the video. I'm gonna go to the beach now, which is why I don't have any eye makeup on, but I hope you found this video enjoyable, you found it entertaining, and maybe you learned something. That's literally all that I want. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Take care.